Residential realtors with Compass, but we're not here today to sell real estate. What we do is provide educational seminars every month to seniors on topics of interest to that demographic. This month we decided to do something a little bit different, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Just so you know why we're qualified to teach seminars on topics that seniors are interested in, we have a very advanced designation called Certified Senior Housing Professional. We took a very rigorous year-long course in how to deal with the concerns of people going through a late-in-life move. So it's very involved, very emotional, and we can help you with every step of the way, even if you're 5 years out. But we're not going to be talking about that today. Today we have what we are calling the Appraisals Roadshow, which is obviously a take on Antiques Roadshow. And we are fortunate to have Daniel and Steve from For Sales here today to appraise the items that you've brought and to talk a little bit about the value of your stuff. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Daniel.
Great morning, everyone. I got to be able to hear you guys too. My name is Daniel Sanders. I own and operate a company called For Sales, and we're actually the DC area's largest professional estate sales, auctions, and tangible personal properties appraisals company. We've been in business continuously since 1972, and for those of you that are busy doing the math, I'll make it easy. We're in our 50th year of continuous operation this year. In fact, later today I'm going to be working on planning our 50th anniversary party. My partner is Steve Guterman. He's with Paradigm Experts. It's one of our partner companies, and Steve's expertise is in coins, jewelry, watches, silver, and I do everything else. And we've been putting on this frickin' frack show for a lot of years at this point, and we love doing this. It's a great way to spend a little time with you folks, see what you've got. We've seen some pretty interesting things over the years. Some very large letter openers recently. They look like cavalry sabers. Those were fun. But without spending too much time, why don't we go ahead and jump right in? Would that be okay? All right. So let's go ahead and start with Pam Mills. Pam brought this Disney pencil sketch. That's obviously a pencil sketch, Disney. Pam, where are you? There we go. Okay, so tell us how you got that, what you know about it.
So I've always been a classic Disney fan. I actually worked for Disney when I was early in college, and you kind of know a lot about the history of Walt Disney. And I would collect interesting little Disney-esque pieces, although I don't kind of go overboard. And so when I was, I believe.
Oh, we've seen the people who go overboard.
Oh yeah, I'm not one of those. So when I was a freshman in undergraduate college, someone called me about this sketch saying that they had it for sale, and it was from one of the original animators that worked for Walt Disney. It also is a very unique piece because it is a movie that will never be released to the public ever again, because it is a very inappropriately racially toned movie, particularly by today's or sanity standards. So in this movie, Mickey Mouse portrays with Minnie Uncle Tom's Cabin. And he's in blackface during the movie. And I was told when I bought the piece that only one other person owns one pencil sketch from this movie.
Sure.
And that.
Do you remember the name of the movie?
Melodrama.
Okay. All right.
In 1933.
Okay. So the original Disney animators were called the 9 Old Men. Anybody heard that before? Okay. Does anybody know how that came about? So in the 1940s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt called the Supreme Court justices, who at the time were all men, the 9 Old Men. And it was a reference to the fact that they were out of touch with society and they were out of touch with what was happening in the country. We're not going to go down that path. I know all of you are dying to do that. We are not doing that today. That is not the purpose of this event. So within the Disney corporate structure, there were 9 primary animators, and they were referred to by Walt Disney as the 9 Old Men. He picked up on what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said and absorbed that into the company culture. They were the animators for the original Pinocchio, Bambi, all of the major pictures that you think of as you remember coming out when they first came out or as a child, they were the ones. So this is a wonderful little pencil sketch. There are lots and lots of celluloids. There are lots and lots of various Disney sketch pieces that are out there. This one is indeed a little bit unique. This is a legitimate pencil sketch. I looked at it under a loop. It's really kind of a cute, sweet piece, actually. The celluloids is probably the most common thing. The other kinds of things that are in this genre would be the flip books. And that's where those 9 old men were actually animating and doing everything on the edges of a book. Have you ever did you ever do that as a child, make a stick figure? Okay, right, those little flip books. A sketch like this is going to range anywhere from about $300 to about $2,000 in value. Now, I don't doubt that it's authentic, but I always clarify that I am not an authenticator. And trust me, when we get to Asian stuff, I am definitely not an authenticator because I'm good, but I'm not that good. I would probably put this around the $1,200, $1,300 mark. You could probably resell it. So if you were just reselling it to an interested collector, probably $500, $600. But if you were saying, okay, well, what do I insure it for? And that's what we're going to try and do for each of these items is say, okay, well, if you were to sell it, and fair market value is a transition from a willing seller to a willing buyer, and I'll get into a bit more of that later on. That's sort of what would the market pay for it. And then you can typically add about 60%, depending on the item, but roughly 60% to get to a retail replacement value or an insurance value. So I'd put this somewhere around the $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 for insurance purposes. Now, I don't know that that's enough money that you want to pay for a personal articles policy to cover it, but it's good to know, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to park this back with you, and we'll try to do that as we go through. Wonderful.
Question. Disney an animator?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't think he was. He was a businessman. He was a dreamer.
He was more of like an administrator, but he did draw.
Yeah.
But he had his
didn't
main
do that.
drawer. No, he didn't draw that.
Apple butter, anybody?
His main drawer was Movie Islands, who did the original Mickey.
Okay, so let's deal with the two things you brought, Yolanda. This, hold on, let me put this on, then I can walk it around. Steve, Fana. All right, so this is a print by Andrew Wyeth. All right. Andrew Wyeth was a painter from southeastern Pennsylvania, Chadds Ford area. He was born there, he grew up there, he lived there, he died there. For those of us from that area, and coincidentally, Yolanda and I grew up in the same town that she came from, Westchester, Pennsylvania. For those of us from that area, Andrew Wyeth is a fixture in the community, at least his work is at this point. That is a print called Window by the Sea, and it was done the original was done in 1947. The original hangs in the National Gallery of Arts, and it was done in what's called intempera. Anybody know what that means? So this is a pigmented, it's a pigment that's put together with a glutinous binder. In many cases it was egg. And that's how they made it. It was a sort of a pseudo paint. It was a type of paint that was done. So it was pigments in an egg binder, and that's how it was originally done. It's got a big scratch through it. Yeah, okay. They range anywhere from $35 to about $300. I'd put this more towards the $35 end of the scale. I mean, it's neat for those of us from that area, but as far as monetary value, it's not going to have a whole lot. And when things are that low in value, we're not going to talk about insurance valuations. Yes, ma'am.
Is that an actual print? Is that an actual print that was put on there?
It looks to me like it was, the modern term would be Mod Podged. It looks like a print that was Mod Podged to a wooden block, and then the rectangle was etched into it to make it give it a frame appearance.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so let me go ahead and keep going. I'm going to take your other item here. All right, so this is not about the watercolors that were in it, which actually aren't bad. So frames, does anybody have frames in their home? Did anybody spend real money framing their items? I mean, everybody should be saying yes, because framing is ridiculously expensive, and it holds no value whatsoever. You can spend an absolute fortune framing items, and its resale value is nil. That's just the nature of the beast. Because even when you go to Michael's, their framing department, it's all custom built, custom matted, so it's all done to your taste. But the frame itself, now there are exceptions. Very heavily gilded, so gold-colored antique frames with little cherubs and flowers and all of that, they can have value. And the older they are, the higher the value, as long as the condition is good. Condition, condition, condition. And if someone says, well, why isn't my stuff worth anything? Condition is almost invariably going to be the answer to that question. You have a question for me? I'm sorry?
Alabaster.
Alabaster frames. Okay, so now you're into the stone frames. So you can look at things like the stones themselves will have some value, but it'll be treated more like an older frame because they don't make those anymore.
Yeah.
But you could look at pietra dura. So has anybody traveled to India? Did you go to the Taj Mahal? Okay, that inlay, the black inlay on the white marble, the black marble on the white marble, that's called pietra dura. It's a whole thing, and you can get reds, what's that? It's not Corinthian, you get lapis, that's blue, but the red is the carnelian, that's what it is, the carnelian. So when you get into those types of stone frames with inlays, they can be very expensive because they are also very expensive to acquire, but not in the same way. It's not the same kind of expense, which is mostly manpower that goes into making these custom wooden frames. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, but
No, that's all right. I just thought since it was old, I figured it came from about 1910. The person who painted these pictures had stuck both of them in there. And I thought, well, since it's an old frame, maybe it had some value.
so you think the frame was a Sid?
It was a what?
A Sid from Baltimore.
A sieve.
Oh, But yeah, I thought since it was old, it had value, but, and then I didn't know the artist himself.
Well, there wasn't much of an indicator on there for me, but they're nice little, they're sweet little watercolors.
I know who it is. His name is Howard Mars, but my grandfather's brother. But I just have not been able to find anything.
So unless Howard Morris was a listed artist, okay, a listed artist means that their works are traded in the secondhand market. All right, a listed artist is a known artist who shows, who has galleries, and who is traded in a secondary market like an auction environment. If that's not the case, then it falls into the category of decorative art. And decorative art can range in value from no value to several thousand, but it just sort of depends on the look and feel of things. It becomes much more about what do the items look like, how do they feel, what do they evoke, and you're trying to measure emotional content. So speaking of decorative art, I'm going to keep on moving. This is tell us what you know about this.
That painting was in my parents' house for 70 plus years.
Okay.
My parents are originally from Chicago. My grandfather and his brother both had stores where things came and went.
Okay. So there was decorations within the store where they were selling these kinds of things?
They sold all sorts of things.
So more like a general merchandise type store, general store type thing?
Right. And
Okay.
I just fit in with
Thanks.
my parents'
Sure.
furniture, and so I'm sure a relative gave it to them.
Sure. Well, so let's talk about this a little bit. The first thing that I notice as someone who handles a lot of artwork is the amount of craquelure. Craquelure is the scaling. It looks almost a little bit like alligator skin. Did you see that when it came breezing by? Okay, so that's a function of age, it's a function of the tension of the canvas and the quality of the paints that were used to make it. I don't know how to connect this to Chicago, because to me this looks like a Belgian or a French scene. It looks like a reproduction or something to be done in the style of one of the old masters. I went looking for a signature, and right in here there seems to be some sort of signature, but I really can't make it out with the craquelure. I think this is probably more in the vein of decorative art, in that it was something your parents enjoyed. You've got memories associated with it because it was in your parents' home, but it isn't necessarily a tremendous amount of financial value. It is old. I can see the canvas on the edge back here. So the canvas is still on its original stretcher, and then someone backed it with masonite board. It's backed with masonite, so I can't really see what's going on in there with the stretchers, but my bet is that the stretcher is correct from probably around 70 to 80 years ago, 70 to 90 years ago. It's old, it's not necessarily of great value, but it is, I can see how it would have emotional attachment or sentiment for you. In its current condition, decorative art, again, without having been able to find a signature, it's hard to give it much more than that. I'm probably somewhere in the $25 to $125 range in terms of what somebody might pay for it. So, does anybody else have Steve Bears in their home? You've seen those, right? So, most well known for their button ears. That was one of the hallmarks of the Steve Bear. And if you look in there, you can see they'll have little round button-shaped ears. All right. Now, older Steve Bears can sell for significant amounts of money. I mean, real money into the thousands. Steve Bears in general, let me see what my notes were. I fortunately got to see some of these things ahead of time, gave me a chance to take a quick look. So, Steve Bears, it's very common for them to be treated as family heirlooms, because especially if they have the tags on them, a lot of the tags were riveted into the ear. If you played with it, you pulled the tags off. The value kind of goes with the tag, so the tag's off, it's gone. This set they started doing in the 80s. They started doing annual sets. An annual set will sell for about $500 these days. So that's sort of your base, that's your starting point. Now you've got them signed. I didn't open it up. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to crack the seal on your item. But the fact that you're telling me they're signed by both the Steves, well, that's fantastic. I'd probably put that as in the $700 to $800 for a collector, somebody who was interested in Steve Bears. Insurance value, again, you could just about double it, but I wouldn't necessarily go and spend the money on a personal articles policy for an item that's under a few $1,000s. So, but it's great. It's a great little collection. He's still going, so I'm going to take the next item. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So Emily again. I beheaded the pig. We're having barbecue. So, cookie jar. Let me put it back together. And the artist was so good. They put the buttons on the suspenders. The buttons are on the bottom. The suspenders are on the top. So there's a wonderful little cookie jar, which Emily's having panic as I hold it. I can see that. I can see it. I can feel your tension over here. So this one's marked USA. It's not going to be one of the manufacturers like McCoy that's a little bit better known and all of that, but it's a great cookie jar. It's got a wonderful shape. She's charming. I'm assuming it's a she. She's charming. I'd put $300 on something like this to the right collector at the high end. I think you're probably somewhere in the $200 to $300 range.
I just saw it online for $3,300.
Well, then you need to find whoever bought that one and sell it to them. I said for the right collector. But we see a lot of this. Are you sure the one that you saw wasn't marked McCoy or one of the other manufacturers? It wasn't. Is it Hull? This is Hull with the USA, right?
It's called Smiley Pig.
Smiley Pig. Well, see, somebody did their homework. Clearly not me. Great. All right, so let me double check then. So now that I have a little more information, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and I'm going to come back to Smiley Pig. Hold on, let me take a look.
Irene. Where's Irene? Irene. So Irene brought in a couple of watches, right? A couple of timepieces. What do you know about them?
They've been in the family for a long time.
Bring it up close to you.
They've
Yeah.
been in the family for a long time. They're my husband's. And he's out of town, and that's why I'm here, and he's not.
Okay. So basically, they're your husband's watches.
Watches for his
They've been in the family forever.
years.
Okay. And one is very, very old, and one is not so very, very old. Okay? However, the deal around here is Daniel lets me come with him, but unfortunately he doesn't pay me. So what he does is he says, I can pick one piece every time we go on one of these. So I'm going to take the Vacheron piece. I think that'll be a fine one for myself. The Vacheron Constantine. That's going to be the one. I think that'll be a nice piece. You have brought two very interesting watches. The Coronet, which is this one here, which is, it is not marked. It is 18 karat gold. The band is not. It's gold filled. The diamonds in there, there's baguettes, and there's old mine cut diamonds that were cut approximately around the turn of the century at 1900, maybe anywhere between 1895 and 1900. The other good news is one thing about timepieces. The best part about these old ones that are mass produced, they must work. Guess what? This one works. Very, very rare, so that's great. If I was putting a number to buy it, I would want to pay $1,000 for the piece. The band is not, that's just gold filled, so that's not particularly interesting. Then we have the Vacheron Constantine. Okay? Now the interesting thing is, this is one of the, if you were naming the brand names, this would be way up there. Vacherons, like Rolex, right up in the same category. What's that?
That's exactly what he was hoping for. It was a gift.
A gift, yes. In fact, actually, is that Harry?
Yes.
Harry, for 25 wonderful years, love, what's your name? Okay, let's not discuss who it's by. Who's Seal?
I have no idea.
Why is he getting gifts from Seal? Oh, it's not your...
Very long story.
It's a very long... All right. Any case, if he wanted to sell Seal's 25-year relationship, wonderful years with him for whatever they did together, which I'm sure was great, it's worth $3,500.
Excuse me?
$3,500.
So he was right.
He was correct. Very good. That's why I said this will be the one I want. It really is a fantastic piece. Vacheron makes spectacular watches. We don't see them often, but it's certainly on the same level as a Rolex.
Well, thank you. He got that from somebody.
I don't need to.
Owed him money.
We don't.
So thank you.
Oh, okay.
That's the whole thing.
Okay, so well.
So you say $3,400?
$3,500.
$3,500.
Terrific piece. Terrific piece. Very nice.
Yippee.
Yeah, nice going. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm walking around with it, giving it to people.
Oh, you got it. Great.
All right, I think he's turning it back to me. I think that deep silence meant it was back to me. Okay, so I absolutely agree that this is Smiley Pig. I absolutely disagree that it's Hull pottery. It's Shawnee.
Oh, Shawnee.
Okay, Shawnee was a pottery manufacturer out of Zanesville, Ohio, which is an area that's well known for the pottery studios. Shawnee operated from 1936, 7? Don't hold me to it, I think it was 7, to 1961, roughly. 61, 62, I think it was 61, actively producing. They were best known actually for their corn pottery. which is so appropriate given the corn TikTok kid, the kid who was made the Corn King, right? So, but they did, has anyone ever seen the pottery? And it's shaped like corn. It's mugs and it's got, you see the kernels and then the leaves folded over, and so it's three-dimensional. That's what they were best known for. I'm also going to stand by my $300. So, if you can find the person who paid $3,300, 100% you should go after them. Because there's a sucker born every moment. So, but Shawnee pottery, it's lovely. It's a great example. She's charming. I double checked myself because I wanted to be sure, but even the configuration of the flowers is exactly what it should be for Shawnee pottery. See, I'm getting double checked over there right now.
No, not on that.
You want to see my findings?
No,
Okay.
I'm gonna look at Donald.
Okay, yeah, Donald. So Donald's older. And once again, Emily's having a heart attack that I'm holding her pottery. Coin slot in the top. Should be a little rubber plugs or something in the bottom. But otherwise, I wouldn't put in any silver dollars, so I don't think you're getting them back out without breaking Donald, because the holes in the bottom are smaller than the coins, right? Yeah. So lovely. Not branded, so probably a Disney knockoff would be my guess, because normally they were pretty good from the very beginning about making sure their brand was on everything. A little bit of paint loss here and there. Not me, I'm holding on to the white parts. But it's a great older piece. I would probably put this into the probably sometime in the early 50s, late 40s, something like that. I mean, it's an older piece because this was one of the more original representations of Donald Duck. I mean, he looked different later, right? And again, I believe it's a knockoff. I don't believe that this is a Disney product per se. I would put, I don't know, the right person, $50, $75, $100, something like that. That's a great little piece. It's fun. It's fun. Great little dust collector. German Stein. Who brought the German? There we go. Okay. So, wonderful German Stein. It's older. What do you know about it?
Given to my grandparents on their wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
1947.
That must have been a heck of a party. If you're giving beer steins for a wedding gift, that's okay. So, this is a very typical patterning, but what's important is see what good condition the image is, and it's a hunting image. So the beer steins fall into a variety of different themes. You have country, you have military, you have hunting and game, and it's the German for Stein is a Steinzollkrug, which Stein is German for stone, because these were typically made out of stoneware. The English made stoneware, the Germans made stoneware. It's a type of ceramic. Now this thing is labeled, so we know that this is from December 23rd, 1907, so it was probably manufactured right around then. It's really in remarkable condition for what it is. German steins go from this size, and sometimes even a little bit smaller, to the ones that really, really have the money in them, and those are the big ones. And when you look at the steins, you're looking at three things. You're looking at the height, you're looking at the adornment, so the level of intricacy. So they had series that had the royalty, nobility on them, or the military ones, and you're looking for the complexity of the top. So has anyone seen them with cannons on top? No, it's from a military division. They would sometimes be made, much like the U.S. uses challenge. The military uses challenge coins nowadays. They would have steins made representing their military units. Steins go anywhere from $50 to $5,000. This is, $150, $200 or so, mostly because of the age and the condition. The image is good, but it's not what I would put in that category of being hyper interesting, if that makes sense. And I'm not being critical, don't misunderstand me, I'm not being critical, but that's the evaluation that we're doing. So we're saying, okay, does this really have a striking element to them? The biggest one I've ever seen was about this big. I don't even know how you begin to drink from something like this. A long straw. Yeah, that's a good answer. All right, with the long straw answer, I turn it back to you. Does anybody know when the first time was that gold was used in dental repair? Since we were on that topic anyway. No, nothing? Somebody wage a guess? I mean, our elementary schools are already good at this.
I have teeth that have the gold pieces in them.
Right, but I'm looking back to when did it first start being done?
1600. 1600.
Way earlier.
Random guess.
Way earlier.
Yes.
It's a good guess. We're headed there. The Egyptians.
Really?
The Egyptians. And I guarantee that what grade are they doing that? 4th grade, 5th grade? 4th grader, 5th grader will be able to answer that question way better than the rest of this room. Okay, where were we? What were we doing next? Oh, the knife. The knife. Howard, tell us about the knife.
Well, it's from my wife's family. Her uncle brought it back from World War II.
Okay.
And,
Hold it up.
Just hold it up.
oh, hello there. So, it's imprinted, it says 1944.
It does after I read it to you.
Yeah. I saw that before.
Okay, so this is I concur, this is a Philippine bolo knife. It was a fighting knife, or the shape is called a bolo knife, where it's wider and then it tapers down to the handle. Was a common single blade knife. In small format, you saw that in the West. In large format like this and larger, you would see it typically in the Philippines. And these were knives that were often carried by the Philippine resistance brigades that were helping fight against the Japanese in the Philippines. So this was a very common thing for them to carry. It's a nice example. The sheath is in actually pretty good shape. I would be careful because the woven banding that's on there, we had a piece flake off earlier, is a little bit brittle. I mean, the whole thing's a little brittle and the wood's dried out at this point. So don't go hunting with it. But it's a nice little piece. We see these sell for, a couple $300, $200 to $300. So nice little piece. So, and then I think we've got that, and we've got the apple butter pot. Yeah, go ahead and do those. And we'll finish on the apple butter.
Thank you.
Who brought in the coins? What's your name?
Jesse.
Jesse. Nice going. What did you bring?
My granddad just gave it to me.
Your granddad just gave it?
I just think it's cool, so I'll keep it forever, but I thought it'd be interesting to learn more about them, if anything.
Number one, it's a complete set, which is great. But let's talk about U.S.
That's U.S.?
Yeah. But let's talk about coins in general. Coins in general, the big date is 1964. 1964 and older were made out of 90% silver, dubbed coin silver. Okay, so usually everybody from your grandfather's generation had a guy, and they would bring in their regular coins and they'd change them out every single week so that they could end up with silver coins. What is the value? Because of course, if you bring this to a bank, all that they can give you is the face value for them. However, in here you have a Morgan silver dollar and a peace dollar. These are worth $28 and $25 respectively, whereas the Eisenhowers, the bicentennials, are worth $1 a piece. Yeah. Then you have the Susan B. Anthony dollar, which is worth $1, very good. And we have the Kennedy 1776 to 1976, which is also worth $1. And then we have the halves. And we have the Barber, the Liberty, the Ben Franklin. The Kennedy through 1964, each of these are worth approximately $7 a piece. In 1965, 6, 7, 8, and 9, the only exception to my 64 rule is the Kennedy half dollars, which were done in 40% silver. So this is $2, these 1968, and then we come to the 1971, which of course is worth $1 again. Your dimes. The old dimes from 1964 all the way back, they're worth approximately $1.20 a piece. The other dime is worth 10 cents. Your nickels, the Liberty nickel, which we call V nickels because on the back it has the V, is worth 10 cents. The Buffalo nickels, very, very simple. If you can read the date, and it is a really low threshold. If you can barely read the date, it's worth 25 cents. If you cannot read the date, it's still worth a dime.
It's a 1937 D, it's worth $1,000.
Oh, if you have, no, they were going to get, that's correct. If you have, these are the war nickels, 42, 43, 44, 45. That's the only time. Nickels, everybody brings me a bag of nickels every week from 1964 and further. And the unfortunate thing about nickels is they are not silver, they are nickel. That's hence why we call them nickels. That's right. Except for 42, 43, 44, and 45, when we did mint them in silver, and they're worth 89 cents a piece. Very good. We have the Indian head penny. Anybody have Indian head pennies? Great.
In case anyone was wondering, we work on very low margin business.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's the Indian heads. The best way to say is if it's from the 1800s, figure it's worth $1.50. It's from the 1900s, it's worth a buck and a quarter. Just figure that they're all going to be worth about $1, and I think you're fine. The wheat pennies, real simple. Goes up to 1958 and older. The wheat pennies, if you have them, they're worth 3 cents a piece. Except if you have the 09 VDBS, in which case it's worth $1,100. Don't look, I've spent in 42 years, I've come across 2 legitimate. Every other one is usually burned on. They're counterfeit.
Has anyone ever thought they found a three-legged buffalo nickel? You didn't.
They're mostly fun. Yeah.
Somebody got busy with a Dremel tool.
and that's correct. The 1943, the steel penny. Does anyone have steel pennies?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the steel pennies, they used them in 1943. What happened was the government needed the copper for the war effort, so they decided that they were going to mint them in steel, and they used 99% steel on this. And the unfortunate part is that after a year, they figured out that they corrode. Yeah, so you would have thought somebody with a bigger, something larger than that would have been, would have figured that one out. Then we have the 1959 penny. What do you think they're worth? A penny a piece. You got it perfect. By itself, if we were to break it up, it would be worth about I just did the math, was almost $80. Because it's a complete book, it's $150. Now, pretty good. Yeah.
Somebody was at Walking Liberty.
That's a half dollar, $7.
Oh.
Yeah. Anybody, go ahead.
Anybody who buys those?
I buy them. I buy everything.
Who buy the coins?
I buy everything. I'm glad you mentioned that. So we'll go to currency. Okay. Yours too? All right. We have a bunch of $2 bills. Does anyone have $2 bills?
Yeah.
What are they worth? $2. Very good, very good. Then we have the silver certificate. That's okay. And silver certificates, this is in pretty good shape. Except someone wrote on the back of it. All right. We don't judge here. We just they're $1.25 a piece. If they're in perfect shape, they're worth about $2. So you have the 2s, you have these. The ones that are worth something, does anyone have the $3 bills? The $3 bills?
Never sold.
What?
Never sold.
You never saw one?
$3.
Oh my God, they're worth someplace, you know what, I was talking to my buddies at the Treasury Department, they said that they're worth approximately 7 to 10 years. You got to think about that. Right. No, you don't want to do that. Right. They would not be real. Yeah, that would be very bad. I think that yeah.
I have a
Please.
$5 bill that has a blue stamp on it.
What kind of stamp?
A
blue stamp. We're going to have some blues, we're going to have some reds, we're going to have some gold seals. There's different seals. Each one of them, for the purpose of today, I'm running through just the basic values. But a blue stamp, I'd like to see that because it could be, it's not going to be out of the park. I mean, it's going to be $7 or $8. It's not going to be $5. The gold could be twice the value. So if you had a gold stamp, sometimes you see the word Hawaii on the back. They can be worth $20. On the other hand, if they're just plain, they're going to be $7, $8 a piece. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering on the Morgan dollars, are they all around 25?
No, if you have any Carson cities, they're going to be worth hundreds of dollars a piece.
About 5 or 6 Morgans.
Oh, yeah, I want to see them because each, very good. The question was, I have a few Morgan silver dollars, they all about 25 bucks. The answer is no. Okay, for the purpose of today, I'm using strictly the trade value, the low end of the trade value. However, mint marks, condition, the mintages are all going to have an effect. So if you had the Carson City mints on these things could be worth several $100s with no problem. Yes?
I have what I think is a Chinese coin.
Uh-huh.
Silver, and it's big.
Big.
Probably bigger than a dollar coin.
Yeah. Does it have a guy on it that looks a lot like Daniel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it looks like Daniel, it's priceless in itself, right? Okay. But if we're looking at it just for the silver value of the piece, it's worth $64. Right as of like last week. So I think you're right on there.
$64,000?
$64. Yeah, 64,000. No, not 60. Yeah. Gold coins. Anyone have any gold coins?
Sure.
Likewise, if anybody has a $10 gold piece, what do you think that's worth?
Half of that.
Half an ounce. And if you have the $5, it's about a quarter of an ounce. And if you have the $2.50 gold piece, it's an eighth of an ounce. Any other questions on coins?
All right. Then 2 more items to finish. Steve, help me lift this thing up. It's not that heavy.
My pleasure.
But just, okay. All right. Everybody see it? Because then we're going to put it down. All right. Who brought it? All right. Tell us about it. What you got?
So it's copper. I know it's an apple butter.
Correct.
It's my husband's parents were antique dealers, but I think that's one that actually was in their family, not something they picked up from estate sale. And my mother-in-law said that it would be worth a lot more if it had the stand.
It would be worth a little bit more with the stand. And where did they live? Where?
Western Pennsylvania.
Western Pennsylvania makes perfect sense. So Lancaster County area and all of that.
Farther west.
Further west.
They were in
Not as far as Beaver, but
Clarion.
okay. Beaver's all the way out the left side. Okay, so apple butter pot, absolutely correct. Probably late 19th, early 20th century. They are extremely desirable for the right buyer. So the right buyer will pay very real money for an apple butter pot. Goes over the fire, the apples go in it, sugars are added, churned, apple butter. For the right collector in an antique market, if I was going to sell it, so this is one of those items where you have to sell in the right place. The right place, if you're selling it in, say, well, I wouldn't sell them in Maryland because Maryland shoppers are generally pretty cheap. I'd go Virginia, I'd go west and south, Charlottesville down to Boston, or I'd go back into Western Pennsylvania. Should be worth $400 to $600. To a collector of cast iron and coppers and things like that. So nice little piece, great. You know, it's clearly been used. It's got the right kind of dents and dings for being used, which is always fun. And then we have one last late entrant into the beauty pageant, and that was this one. And ma'am, what is your name? Yes, what's your name, ma'am?
Sorry,
What is your name?
Rasmussen.
Okay, and what can you tell us about this?
It's a Chinese lady,
Close to you.
that's about all I know about it.
Okay, so I'm not going to take it apart, but I would be willing to bet that the conversion into a lamp did not actually require the addition of holes.
No.
All right, so I will say from a valuation perspective, this is not perfect. It has a big old crack in it right up here. You were aware of that, right, ma'am? Okay, I just want to make sure I don't get blamed for it. So porcelain pillows were started being used in the Song Dynasty in China through about 1650. And I gotta put it down, it smells like mothballs. Sorry, whew. I was getting that camphor smell right up my nose. So what's interesting about porcelain pillows is that they can range from $50 to $50,000. It's not. It's not. Okay. Porcelain pillows, does anybody know why they use porcelain pillows?
Self-punishing?
No, actually, quite the contrary. Southern China gets extremely hot during the summers. We don't necessarily think about the climates in other continents the way we know that Death Valley's super hot here and Maine is not, but climate change, everything's changing anyway. But the idea was that these porcelain pillows were cooling. And they had effectively the function of personal air conditioning. There was a poet, the poet Zhang Li of the Northern Song Dynasty he wrote a poem. It's called, I had the opportunity to see a photo beforehand, so I was able to come with something a little bit more prepared. Let's see, pillow made by gong is strong and blue. An old friend gave it to me to beat the heat. It cools down the room like a breeze, keeping my head cool while I sleep. And that was sort of his poem inspired this to become a thing. The other part of that is that the other factor was that homes typically tended to be smaller, and so items had to have multiple functions. So these porcelain pillows also acted as decorator accessories and accents in the house when they weren't being used for their intended purpose at night. Now, do you know why there was a hole in porcelain pillows? Well, actually, let's go. So, where else were porcelain pillows used in significant quantity? Anybody want to venture a guess? Okay, opium dens. All right, the reasoning was that sleeping on porcelain, the story is that it will allow you to wake clear-eyed. So you had this air conditioning effect and you had the waking clear-eyed. They transported that, they moved that over to the world of the opium den, and the idea was you could have your opium and wake up clear-eyed. Now, I said that I didn't think they drilled holes to make this a limb. Now, I can't take it apart to prove it, but my guess is that it already has a hole in it. Does anybody want to venture a guess, knowing what you now know, why it had holes in it? Nobody? Nobody wants to get out there? That's a good guess, but it was much more practical than that. When someone went to an opium den, they would put the money to pay for their opium in the hole in the pillow. They would smoke their opium, and then the money was taken by the server. That was the logic. With that crack in it, ma'am, it's not going to it's not going to retain a lot of value. In fact, I'd be reluctant to give it a dollar value because in our world, and you weren't here when we said that earlier, what did I say? What was the number one factor, people? Condition, right? Condition, condition, condition. I mean, is it worth $100? Yeah, maybe. But with that crack, you're going to be hard pressed. So I think we got through everything and we are just about on time.
I want to ask one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Laura, by the way. Sorry I wasn't here at the beginning. I was doing some transportation. Okay, so my mother wanted to leave a legacy to her grandchildren.
Should you buy the plates?
Beanie Babies.
Oh.
We
How
have
much?
bins and bins and bins of BBs, all with tags that have little plastic covers on them. Donate them?
Yes.
Are they-
Well, they have the plastic covers on them.
Yes, they have plastic covers on them. Like-
Then Toys for Tots.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Mine to the hospital.
Well, but you got to be careful. Only if they're plastic wrapped.
We're in plastic.
Right. They have to be plastic sealed, or they can't accept them
Yeah.
because of what it might bring.
They have the plastic over the name tag.
Oh, okay. No, you could probably still do Toys for Tots. The Marines aren't that picky with that stuff. The hospital is a different story. All right. So the thing about Beanie Babies was, it had its moment in the sun, and then the sun went away. There is a. If you go and do just a little bit of research on the internet, if you just go to the Google, and you search for the guy who thought he was going to pay for his kid's college education by collecting Beanie Babies. Okay, I have my thoughts about this guy. So, not to leave this room. What an idiot. He was taking his kids out of school to go stand in line to buy the Beanie Babies to pay for their college education that they weren't going to be qualified for because they weren't in school to pass their tests. Just saying. He spent a fortune. I believe the number was something in the $200,000 range, with the expectation that they would continue to go up. He was at every first day issue of a new Beanie Baby. He would bring his kids, his wife, he was drafting his friends, because you could only buy one. And the prices went through the roof. And then the bottom fell out. And then they were $1 a piece. And now you'd be lucky to sell them.
The bears cost more than the rest.
Sometimes. And then there's always somebody who brings up the Princess Diana bear. And there are different versions of the Princess Diana bear, and the one that's worth $1,000 is the one that nobody ever has. So.
Thank you, because that's a family debate constantly. Because she had 7 grandchildren.
Toys for Tots.
And
Toys for Tots. That would be my guidance on that one. So with that, I think that brings us to a conclusion. We do offer appraisal services. We buy, we sell. I don't buy, he buys. I'm a seller's agent. I only work on a commission basis, and I do projects that range from a modestly sized consignment to a whole house of stuff, which ties back into what do you need to do to get a house ready to go on the real estate market. And with that, we'll turn it back over to you, ladies.
Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you had a good time.